تجدون اسم ضيفي على قائمة 40 under 40 لمجلة فورتشين. قبلها كان ضمن قائمة فوربس لل 30 under 30. نعم، ضيفي بدأ نجاحاته منذ سن مبكرة جدا. لم يكن لويل أحمد ابن المهاجر المصري وظيفة أو أي خبرة في مجال الأعمال عندما أسس شركته في العام 2012 فور تخرجه من الجامعة. وخلال 8 سنوات أصبحت ووب شركة مليارية، وبعد أقل من عام جمعت الشركة تمويلاً ب 200 مليون دولار، رفع تقييم الشركة إلى نحو 3.6 مليار دولار. تتمثل مهمة ووب ليس فقط في تحسين أداء البشر بل أيضاً في الحفاظ على صحتهم والوقاية من المرض. أما مستخدمو ووب فهم متنوعون، من المهتمين باللياقة البدنية والرياضيين المحترفين إلى مقدمي الرعاية الصحية والعسكريين، وأيضاً وصولاً إلى الرؤساء التنفيذيين ورجال الأعمال. أهلاً بكم إلى حلقة جديدة من حديث مع صبا. I will. Hello and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. First trip to Saudi?
It's actually my 5th trip to Saudi Arabia.
5th? How come? I mean, how did it change for you?
Well, believe it or not, I first came to Saudi Arabia 20 years ago, which is a strange sounding thing for a kid from New York. But my father's Egyptian, and he came to this United States when he was 22 years old, and so he had a bunch of relationships in the Middle East. And I tagged along with him on a business trip. And, 20 years ago, I wouldn't say that there were a lot of things that I remembered about being in Riyadh. But 2 years ago, I came back and I was amazed by how much the country had changed. I mean, enormous change. And it's not just that the country's changed so much, it's that there's an attitude of momentum. There's a real vision and sort of energy for the future. And even just in the last 2 years, I've now been coming every 6 months or so, and I've seen a lot of enthusiasm for the future.
Right. Yes. And the startup scene would not have been what it is today 20 years ago. What do you think of Garage here?
It's great. I mean, I think it's really important to have communities where startup founders can work together, learn from one another. I mean, at the end of the day, starting a company is hard, right? And a lot of companies fail or struggle. And so I think it's valuable to have infrastructure that supports young companies, because at the end of the day, young companies, small businesses, they can really make an economy much stronger.
So you started Whoop quite early on. You were quite young, and you built it into this mammoth of a company at the moment. You started Whoop initially because you had a question in your head, and it was this solution. What was the question?
The simple question was, how do I measure my body? I was an athlete. I was 20 years old. I was playing squash at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I felt like I didn't know what I was doing to my body while I was training. I was someone who used to overtrain, so you kind of get fitter and fitter, and then mysteriously you fall off a cliff and you don't know why. And so I got very interested in this question of, well, what can you measure about the human body to better understand training, to better understand performance? And as a student, while I was at Harvard, I read hundreds of medical papers, and I did a lot of physiology research, and I essentially came up with a plan in my mind of, if I could measure these things, I would have a system to really understand my body. And that idea became the seed of starting Whoop. I really didn't think I was going to start a company as a 20-year-old. I really didn't even know what it meant to be an entrepreneur. But I became obsessed with this challenge, this problem, and that pulled me through.
But how did it evolve into a company then?
So first it was research as a student. Then it was developing a business plan, which I made between MIT and Harvard. And then it was meeting with a lot of different engineers and researchers, doctors, athletes, to try to get a better understanding for the opportunity. And at some point, it became really all I was thinking about. Okay. So in a way, it didn't feel like I was choosing to start a company. It felt like I had to start a company.
Because you studied economics, didn't you?
I studied government and economics technically as my concentration. Yes. And in my free time and even for other classes, I was doing a lot of medical research.
So how much science did you have to take on to bring WHOOP along? Or did you reach out to friends, get help with the science?
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, I read probably 500 medical papers, which is crazy to think about. But there's a good saying, which is, if you're nervous, be prepared. I felt like I was onto something, but I was nervous about what that meant. Like, what does it mean to start a company or build your own technology? And so it made me just do work. Like, I just did a lot of work. I met with a lot of people. And all of that led to ultimately founding the company in the summer of 2012. I had just graduated from Harvard, and I started working out of the Harvard Innovation Lab there.
So is WHOOP a fitness tracker?
WHOOP is, I think, best described as a health monitor, a continuous health monitor. Now, the applications for WHOOP are pretty widespread. So if you're an athlete, you can focus on training, exercise, strain, but we also have a whole apparatus around recovery, which is relevant for everyone on WHOOP. Sleep, which is a huge component of being able to understand your body and being primed to perform in really any occupation. We've got a lot of functionality now for stress monitoring, so you can actually see how stressed you are at any moment of the day.
Yep.
We came out with a health monitoring feature, which shows you if anything on your WHOOP app is elevated or out of range. Might be a sign you're getting sick. So that was something we developed during COVID. Mm-hmm. We have the ability for you to join different teams and look at other people's data. So it's really, there's a lot of functionality, and it appeals now to a much wider audience than it did 10 years ago.
But 10 years ago when you started, you weren't the only one, and you're up against some really heavy competition.
The giants.
The big giants. We're talking about Apple, we're talking about Google, we're talking about Amazon. So what is it that made you think that you can actually compete in that playing field? You're a sportsman.
Well, I think in one sense I was... In one sense, I would say I was naive to how hard it would be to build this company. And that was an advantage.
Yeah.
But the thing that WHOOP got right is we were very focused. You know, when you look at a WHOOP strap, it's a very minimalist design. Mm-hmm. It's mostly material. There's no watch. There's no push notifications, emails, phone calls. It's a very focused product. If I go back to 2013-14, Apple was entering the market, Microsoft, Google, Intel, the sports apparel brands, Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, Puma. There was up and coming companies, Fitbit, Jawbone, and others. So the space was very crowded, and everyone was focused on creating some kind of a watch interface, and they were focused on trying to have a lot of different capabilities, too many capabilities. And so they really weren't focused. They were trying to do too many things. Whereas WHOOP had a very singular focus on being able to measure the human body. We're going to be great at health monitoring. We're going to have the most accurate data. You're going to wear it all the time, never take it off. And that's how we're going to really understand humans. We also had this strong point of view that we were going to start with the world's very best athletes, and then over time, make our way to the mass market. And if you look at a lot of products, when they first launched, they went mass market immediately. But they never really found anyone who loved their product. We've always been about find people who love your product, and then you can grow from there. And I think there's a lesson in that for entrepreneurs. It's not actually about the big market. You'll get to the big market. But initially, you got to find a solution that's focused that a lot of people love. And our version of that was professional athletes introducing recovery. We're going to give you a recovery score every day, 0 to 100%, red, yellow, green. How prepared are you to perform today? And that was something that other professional athletes hadn't seen before. And so we were able to attract interest from people like Michael Phelps and LeBron James and Patrick Mahomes and Rory McIlroy, like these kings of their sport at a very early stage for the business. No one had really heard of WHOOP when we were starting to work with these athletes.
But then Would you say, or some might argue then, is Whoop a bit too elitist then? Is it meant for the ultra-high performers?
Whoop is for someone who's aspirational. A high-performance lifestyle might not be for everyone,
No.
but a lot of people want to perform at a higher level. And that could be in a sport or that could be in your daily life. And I think what Whoop has proven is we've gone from these world's great athletes to now a much wider audience. And we're here in Saudi. I mean, the product is everywhere. You look around, you can't go anywhere without seeing a Whoop.
That's right.
And not everyone wearing it is a professional athlete.
But it's a bit like a cult now because people see each other, oh, look, we've got something in common. Somehow it tells you something about the other person's personality or commonalities between the two of you.
And we view that as a really good thing.
Yeah.
Because when you're building a product that people need to wear on their bodies, you want it to have a positive connotation about them. If you think about health monitoring historically, it actually had a fairly negative perception. If you were wearing a medical device or a health monitor, people might think, oh, there's something wrong with her. She might be sick, you know? So it was a stigmatized space.
Sure.
And in developing Whoop, I hoped that we could build technology and a wearable that would be aspirational, be positive. What if measuring these things actually said something good about you, not something negative?
Yeah.
So I love that it has that status today.
Yeah, it could tell that you're serious about health, you're committed, you're willing to do what is necessary to take, to remain healthy, to avoid disease, and all of these things. So in 2017, you partnered with the NFL. Was that a very clever way of harvesting good, clean data to teach your AI models?
Well, we've always wanted to work with the very top athletes in addition to everyday consumers. And the NFL is obviously the most popular sport in America. And we had already seen a lot of footballers wearing Whoop. And so it was a natural extension to do a partnership with them. I think one thing that's very underestimated in these high-end sports is the other 20 hours of the day. It's not just when they're competing and training. It's what are they doing all other hours of the day. Whoop has this big focus on 24/7 measurement and being able to understand sleep and recovery for the first time in a way that no product had done before it.
So you mentioned the top athletes, whether it was Michael Phelps or LeBron James, all the athletes that adopted the technology early. Or how did it get on the radar?
Well, we initially went to their trainers. We went to their trainers and we told them about the technology. And at that time, personal trainers were less well known. But personal trainers also spent 10 hours a day with their athlete. So they had this really close relationship with their athlete. And as a consequence, we were able to get them to understand the technology and then from there, put it on their athletes. And at some point, either the product works or it doesn't.
And it seems that it did, because that has now extended to Cristiano Ronaldo, for example, who's now an investor in the company.
Correct. Cristiano had worn Whoop for 2 years before I ever met him, or before the company ever really had a relationship with him. And again, I think that speaks to the authenticity of the product. Everything else on his body, probably someone was paying for him to wear. And yet he was wearing Whoop because he realized it was the best product. And he's, I would say, a real sports scientist in that way. He's trying all these different things. He wants to be the very, very best. He's obsessed with that idea. And when we first met, which was, I think, in January of this year, we really hit it off around being able to understand data, measuring the body, recovery, longevity. That's a big theme for Cristiano now. And so we talked about a partnership, and he became an investor in Whoop and a global ambassador. And it's corresponded also with Whoop growing around the world.
Yeah.
Whoop is not just a U.S. business anymore. A lot of our sales are coming from all around the world.
And it's not just a device for sportsmen or sports people, I should say. The military also use it, and executives perhaps. How does it help executives in their decision making, in their boardroom, in staying healthy? And
yeah, look, if you need to perform any task in your daily life, there's a question of how primed you are to do that. And let's take sleep, for example. Someone who spends 7 hours in bed is not actually getting 7 hours of sleep. And the period of time in which they spend getting slow wave and REM sleep is the most important period of their rest. And that period of time, REM sleep, is when your mind is repairing cognitively. So if you have a stressful job, if you're trying to learn something, if you're trying to make an important decision the next day, you want to get a lot of REM sleep. Slow wave sleep, that's when your body produces about 95% of its human growth hormone. And so that's what your body does to repair its muscles, to get stronger, to recover from injury. So these periods of times, REM sleep and slow wave sleep, are deeply important to your overall body's performance, and especially to cognitive function. And so if you spend 7 hours in bed, you might get as much as 5 hours of REM and slow wave sleep, or you might be someone who gets as little as 30 minutes. And what you want to do is try to identify what are things that I can ultimately figure out so that I'm on the higher end of that spectrum, not the lower end. If you're on the higher end of that spectrum, I can promise you, you are feeling great. Like there's a lot of things that are going well for you. If you're on the low end of that spectrum, I can almost promise that there's certain things that aren't going well in your life that probably can compound later into different disease states and illnesses. So high quality sleep, I would say, is probably first and foremost one of the main things that executives get out of wearing Whoop.
So the interest in health, wellness, longevity is kind of like building up recently. Are we peaking? Where are we in that cycle? And which came first? The technology that developed with these wearables that allowed people a bit and sort of a peek into what their bodies are doing, or was it the interest in staying healthy that pushed the technology development further?
Well, I have to say, I think we're still very early to health monitoring. I think that, probably less than 1% of human beings monitored their sleep yesterday, or monitored their bodies yesterday. And if you think about the power of where technology is going, and Whoop in particular being able to really accurately measure your body, I think it's only a matter of time before a continuous health monitor will be able to tell you all these issues that you may or may not have in your life. It'll alert you if you're about to have a heart attack. You're not going to go to a doctor on a random day of the year for a checkup. You're going to go 30 minutes before something's about to happen.
Right.
Disease states, illnesses, these are things you can be alerted about. Having technology that can coach and guide you to be healthier and live longer. I think that's the promise of really accurate health data coupled with artificial intelligence.
So in 2012, you started the company. In 2020, you got to a $1.3 billion valuation. You're a unicorn now. And then a year later, 2021, the valuation was $3.6 billion. Did COVID help?
I think COVID definitely made more people aware of their bodies and their health. The other thing about COVID was that you could get sick but have no symptoms. And then you could give this virus to a loved one, and then that person could be very sick, even though you weren't sick. And what that revealed to people is there's stuff going on inside my body that I can't feel. Whoop was founded in a lot of ways based on that thesis. Essentially, feelings are overrated. You can't feel everything that's going on, otherwise why would you need technology at all? And so during COVID, Whoop was able to show that an elevated respiratory rate, which is a measurement that we measure, could be a predictor of COVID. And so we were able actually to tell people they had COVID 2-3 days before they got sick, before they felt anything. And I think for a lot of people that made them realize just the power of technology, the power of continuous monitoring. And again, this idea that there are things going on in your body that you can measure that you can't feel.
So if you are helping prevent disease or giving us the tools to hopefully prevent, governments must love you because you're going to take a lot of pressure off their health systems. Isn't that right? So what are the impediments or what's stopping bringing this technology to the masses?
I think there's still more work to do to educate the public on the fact that this technology even exists. You know, at least in the US, for example, healthcare is the number one cost. And yet, you know, there's hundreds of millions of people who aren't taking any continuous measurements of their body that can ultimately educate them or improve their health. So I think we're still early to an overall brand awareness stage, but I believe in the next decade, you know, over 50% of the world's population is going to continuously wear a health monitor.
And will insurance companies love you then?
I think that insurance will inevitably work hand in hand with wearable technology because wearable technology stands the ability to shift curative costs to preventative. And that can make the system much more efficient. I also think it ties to life insurance because it's going to help people live longer versus shorter.
Let's talk a little bit about how you built the business. You didn't only need to build a good product, a nice product that is usable, that is also useful. You also needed to be very good at raising funds.
Sure.
So how did that work out for you?
Well, in the early days, I would say it was hard to raise capital for the business. I was an unproven entrepreneur.
Yes.
And we hadn't built all of the technology yet. We were competing against the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah.
So it was hard to raise capital. You know, there were a lot of periods of rejection and...
How many no's did you get?
Hundreds.
Because people have counted their no's. I know entrepreneurs who have kept record.
Well, at some point you get over being rejected all the time and then you stop keeping track.
How do you do that? Rejection is hard.
Well, in the early days, I tried to put up a wall to rejection. But then over time, I became more comfortable with being rejected. And then it actually just became something that sort of naturally was dismissed. You know, it wasn't something that bothered me as much.
When is a one no one too many?
I can't answer that question for people because I got a lot of no's.
Yeah.
And if I had quit, I think I would have learned all the wrong lessons. You know, people talk a lot about how much you learn from failure, but I think there's as much to learn from being on the brink of failure and persevering.
Yeah. But so what does it take to have that perseverance?
There's a certain obsession you have to have with the problem you're solving. There's a certain belief system that you have to have. A willingness to handle stress and discomfort, because it's a hard process. When you're on the brink of not making it, when a lot of people are telling you you're going to fail, what do you go to? What is your source of confidence or resilience? That's something that comes with time and you have to build. But if you face hard things every day, your threshold for manage them, it keeps going up.
How much did your competing in sports help you in that area?
I think doing anything competitive at a young stage helps. I think I've been competitive with myself more than anyone else. And I think that's important. A big breakthrough for me in building Whoop was actually how I approached building myself.
Yeah.
Which is to say, how do you get a little better every day? You can only control so many things, you realize. And there's a lot of external factors that are going to affect your business that are out of your control. The macroeconomic environment may make your business more valuable or less valuable. It's out of your control. But how you present yourself, how you manage stress, how you recruit your members of your team, how you foster a culture that's around innovation, these are things that you control.
How does a 22-year-old learn all these lessons? How do you build that character from such an early age?
Well, I have a belief that you learn by doing. I think a lot of people come up with these barriers in their mind of why they can't do something yet. oh, I'm going to do this to get experience, and then I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to study this, and then eventually I'll do the thing I want to do. You can do the thing you want to do right now, but it's going to be very uncomfortable, and you have to commit to getting better every day. And that's what I did. I kind of threw myself in the deep end, not realizing how hard it was going to be when I was 22 years old. And then I built a mindset around trying to get a little better. But, you know, it was hard and painful, and I had a lot of bumps along the way. So it wasn't easy.
I'm sure. What's your North Star then? What has been your North Star?
Well, the North Star in building Whoop has been to unlock exhilarating health and potential for the world. We've started with the world's best athletes, and now we're doing it for everyone. And it's only going to continue.
Could you have come up with this solution or answer to that question in your head, put together a proposition or a proposal and taken it to one of those big giants in the market?
No. They wouldn't have talked to me. And for good reason, because I hadn't proven anything.
Okay.
But an advantage that individuals have over big companies is that small people, highly motivated, can move much faster than a big company. And in this case, we're talking about the biggest companies in the world. But Whoop today is 600 people, and I know that there's a team out there of 10 people that's working their butts off trying to take us on, you know? And so it's true at every stage. And that's the amazing thing about entrepreneurship and innovation.
Right. So do you prepare for this future competition? What's next? What's coming into Whoop now?
Well, we're constantly innovating and building on top of our technology. Because Whoop is a subscription and you can actually sign up for free and decide whether you want to stay with the product, we're really in the business of trying to rapidly release new features. So someone who signed up 12 months ago didn't know they were going to get an AI coach in the app, a stress monitor, a health monitor, a strength training coach. These are all things that we've added with time. We just added steps because a lot of people wanted steps. So we're really in the business of constantly adding new features and innovating. And that's how we're going to approach the next year to come.
So you're really updating the software. The hardware stays the same. Competition is bringing out a new piece of hardware every so often, let's just say. Some people would think that your subscription model is expensive or not affordable.
Well, it's less than $1 a day to know the status of your body, to, you know, perform at a higher level, which I think you could argue is actually inexpensive in a sense. I think that people don't realize the power of the technology yet and what you're going to be able to do with all this data. So what's the value of a product that one day can predict you're going to have a heart attack or, you know, tell you have a condition or a disease? I think the value of that's going to be quite high. But in the case of Whoop, the cost may not be any higher.
So this is not just measuring my pulse or my body temperature or how many hours I've slept. It's actually, I've worn it a week now,
Okay,
I have to say. We're still getting to know each other.
That's right. It's calibrating.
It is calibrating. That's what it keeps telling me. Starting to get some colors now to the app. Not very pretty colors. It's been a very busy week, but so far so good. So this is actually prompting me to think about my training. It's prompting me to think about my sleep and taking it to another level. So it's sort of like you have a coach along with you. So what's the AI application that's working here?
Well, it's worth saying that we've been using artificial intelligence for really since the company was founded. A lot of our algorithms are based on machine learning, and a lot of the data we've created has been trained over time to improve how we analyze the human body. I think in terms of generative AI, which is large language models, Whoop now has the ability for you to interact directly in the app with a large language model. We did that in conjunction with OpenAI. And so you can ask Whoop questions. You know, you can say, well, what time should I go to bed if I've got a flight in the morning? Or what time should I work out today if I'm feeling run down? What workouts should I do? Why am I so stressed? How can I be calmer? Am I getting sick?
Well, can I override the AI? Can I decide that, no, I don't want to push myself tomorrow?
Of course. I mean, at the end of the day, you're in control of your body.
Right.
Whoop is just a tool. It aspires to be a great coach. It aspires to drive better health outcomes for you and the rest of the world. But a lot of it at the end of the day is up to you and how you want to use it.
So you have a very structured daily routine, don't you? Waking up at a certain time, your meditation as well. I want to ask you about that a bit later on. How important is it to maintain this kind of strict routine for optimal performance?
I think you want to have a set of behaviors and habits that allow you to manage what's going on in your life. I find running a company to be pretty intense and pretty stressful.
Yeah.
And so I've come up with routines that help me manage that. You know, I'm 35 years old and I'm a CEO and I've got 650 employees and I've got hundreds of shareholders and investors. And so I feel responsible to a lot of people. And of course I'm married and I've got a family I want to show up for. So all of these things make me want to be prepared for the day. And so with that in mind, I have some habits that I find useful. I try to go to bed and wake up at a similar time. I try to get high quality sleep. I meditate first thing every morning. Often I'll exercise first thing in the morning. I'll do a sauna and then a cold plunge. And that combination of things between exercise, contrast therapy, and meditation, it gives me a great balance for the day. And then and then I can have a day that's very back to back and intense and stressful, but I'll feel present and I'll feel like I'm in control.
Talking about control, let's talk about meditation. You'd said that somewhere that meditation is about giving up control. I would have thought meditation is actually about controlling that monkey mind.
Well, it's a little bit of how you phrase these things. I think that the first thing you realize in meditating, if you're doing it properly, is that you can watch thoughts of yours come in and push them along or keep them. And what that allows you to do is create a filter for your mind. And you'll find that there's certain things that come in that you weren't expecting. Maybe it was someone you think of who you hadn't thought of in years. Maybe it was an idea for your business that you needed to know. Maybe it was an appointment you forgot about. All these different ideas will come and you get to decide, should I pay attention to this or should I filter it? And in a sense that gives you more control because you are now in this position to observe yourself in the third person, right? Mm-hmm. This is what Will is thinking about. Does Will want to spend more time thinking about this or does Will want to think about something else? And I've found, for what it's worth, that applies to other aspects of my life, not just when you're meditating, but you're in a room and there's a heavy debate. Are you someone who gets angry and then realizes you're angry? Or are you someone who can observe and you're going to get angry before you get angry? And so there's a relationship you build with yourself that I think is healthy, and I attribute meditation to that. I think for other people that may come in the form of prayer, or may come in the form of mindfulness, but I think developing some kind of quiet relationship with yourself is quite powerful. It's
about just giving yourself that space to think, to contemplate, and just understand what's going on around you, given obviously your busy schedule. In general, I think for most people, their minds are overstimulated and their bodies are understimulated. Yeah. And you kind of want to reverse that. You want your mind to be peaceful and you want your body to have to work. And that's what it feels like to be a high-functioning human. So do you that sort of, those convictions or these habits that you have you infected your employees?
Well, we have some fun policies. We reimburse fitness. We have a sleep bonus. So
I heard.
if you get over 85% sleep every month, you get another $100 on your paycheck. So
I'm coming to work for you.
we're literally paying our employees to sleep. But no, I think overall, the company has a culture around health and a culture around performance. And so these things are ingrained in what we do.
Right. What is the one thing that you find difficult? I mean, if you're going to drop one thing in your daily routine, what would that be?
I mean, I don't know if I would change much about my daily routine. I think it's working. If anything, I like to think about what I can add. I'm more in the mode of addition versus subtraction. Because I've been impressed in my own life how much more you can get out of the day. And sometimes just doing something for 10 minutes can change the next 5 hours. I mean, that's how I feel about meditation. Meditation takes me about 20 minutes in the morning, yet it changes the way I feel going into the whole day. And so what else can I add that might only be 20 minutes or 10 minutes that improves my life or improves the way I feel? I'll give you an easy example. A few years ago, I started wearing blue light blocking glasses. So blue light stimulates your mind, keeps you awake. Devices like iPads and laptops and television sets, iPhones, they're producing light that's telling your body to stay awake. And that's okay in the morning, but if you're looking at those screens right before you go to bed, it's going to affect your sleep. And so these blue light glasses, which Whoop actually now makes, will block the blue light so that you have higher quality sleep. And so an example of adding something to my schedule, my routine, has just been to wear those before I go to bed.
Okay, interesting. So this culture that you have at Whoop, how do you disseminate that? You hold meetings with your employees when they first arrive in the company, or do you still do that?
Well, I have certainly like onboarding meetings where I meet with everyone who has started in the last 2 weeks, and I talk a little bit about the company's culture and what it means to work at Whoop, the importance of having a bias for action and getting stuff done, the importance for Whoop of being an innovative company and really pushing the envelope of what's possible. These are some of the things I like to reinforce to people. And then I would even say it starts with the hiring process. You want to look for people who want to be in that environment. When you sit down with someone and you say, hey, we're going to ask you to develop something that has never been done before, do they say, great, that's really exciting? Or do they say, oh gosh, if it's never been done before, can it be done? And you want people who actually perk up from that ambiguity and that sort of ambition versus who get discouraged by it. And that's just one example of how you try to find someone who fits into your culture versus someone who is probably right for somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you incentivize 600 employees all at once? How do you get them all under one umbrella to want to work together towards one goal?
I think the mission of Whoop is very inspiring. We want to unlock human performance. We want to improve health. We're helping humanity live longer. I mean, that's easy for people to get excited about. It's just a good mission for the world, and it resonates for a lot of people in their own life. I think everyone knows someone who they want to be healthier, and I think a lot of people themselves want to be healthier. So it's a mission that people can get behind. And then in addition to that, we have growth targets. We give employees stock options, so everyone's an owner in the company. And these are the types of things that inspire and attract great talent.
So you conceived the idea, you researched it, you brought it alive, you founded the company, you're the CEO of the company. Taking all these titles away, how do you describe your role at Whoop today?
Well, I think you want to set an inspiration for the organization. You want to try to inspire people when they're backs against the wall, when they don't know how to work, when everything they've tried has failed, how do you keep trying? Because at the end of the day, that's what it takes to create something that hasn't existed in the world. So in a sense, that makes me the cheerleader.
Yeah. Well, your success, especially at such an early age, does it make you want to go ahead and bring about new successes, more successes? Entrepreneurs tend to become serial entrepreneurs.
Well, I think any success I've had with Whoop has come from a somewhat singular focus. I'm not someone who's trying to build 10 companies at once and you sprinkle a little bit of time here. I'm trying to do one thing, and I'm trying to do it really well. I will say that I've gotten more ambitious with time, not less ambitious. And even as I've gotten older, it feels almost like there's more permission to create and push and innovate. So I'm sure there will be other chapters in my life and other technologies that I'll hopefully help build. And today, my enormous focus is on what Whoop is building.
I'm sure you're being pulled in many different directions, partnerships or getting... is it very difficult to say no to those and stay focused?
I think it becomes easier to say no when you have a sort of true compass for what you're trying to accomplish. If something doesn't fit into the mission that we're on, it's easy to say no to.
Yeah. Would you say Whoop was very much self-sufficient? What I said about partnerships earlier, I meant other companies either wanting to use your proprietary technology or wanting you to use theirs.
We don't license our technology to other companies, and we also develop all of our own technology in-house. So that, in a sense, makes partnership conversations kind of easy. But, we have partners when it comes to distribution. We have partners in the form of ambassadors. And those have really, helped, I think, the company grow.
Just a very personal question to end with. Your father's Egyptian. Had you been born in Egypt?
I grew up on the North Shore of Long Island, so about 40 minutes outside of Manhattan.
Yes, but had your father not immigrated, and had you been born in Egypt, your life would have gone in a completely different direction. So it's a big assumption, obviously. How do you envisage that life would have been? I mean, what affected you? What made you who you are and gave you your personality and character the most?
I think that you're a product of your genetics, your parents, the environment you grow up in. I'm someone who believes that if you go back in time and you change one thing, everything else might be different. We wouldn't be sitting here, If maybe one decision each of us made was different, we wouldn't be sitting here. And there's a sort of magic to that too. I mean, there's a beauty to what that means in terms of the importance of everything that you choose to do each day. But I think overall, look, I'm very grateful for what I get to do, the mission that I'm on, and continuing to grow this business.
You said going back in time, and that prompted me to ask you, is there a pharaoh in you?
We'll see.
We'll see. Thank you very much, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you.